I'm Max Meyerhofer, pastor of the Bridge Church, and we're here today with a very special guest, Calvin Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. This is a great opportunity. So, Calvin, I just thought, since we're here together, might as well ask you a few questions, if that's all right with you.
I would love nothing more.
Perfect. Well, we know that you're an amazing comedian, and one of the first questions has to do with comedy, and that is, what do you actually love most about comedy?
Ooh, that's a good question. That is a good question. Well, first off, thank you for having me here. Pastor Max, by the way, one of the greatest pastors I've ever had. Phenomenal dude. And to answer your question, I just love the excitement of it. I love the unpredictableness. Is that a word? It's a word now.
Sounds like a word.
Unpredictableness of it. I love seeing people out in the audience having a great time, because I've been on the audience side before seeing a show, and I've had a great time, so I know what that feels like. But then when you're up here doing it, it's a whole different thing. There's a whole different energy that goes with it, being the person that gives them the opportunity to have fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, interacting with people and preparing things, how do you actually come up with a routine as you're getting ready to perform?
That was the one question I was hoping you wouldn't ask. So I would definitely say that it's literally living my day-to-day life. If I find something that's funny, then I'll write it down, and then I'll try it on stage. If it works, great. If it doesn't, that's a part of the game. That's all a part of it. You don't know until you try it. But I just do stuff that I find funny, and I'm sure that there's a group of people out there that'll find the same thing funny, and if they do, great. If they don't, then, it's okay. You just try something new.
That makes sense. Is a lot of it improv, or is it sometimes going off of the audience and just seeing, okay, are we flowing right now? Are they engaging? Or is it kind of saying, oh, this has worked before with different audiences, that kind of thing?
So I did about 5, 6, maybe 7 years of improv before I did stand-up.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I do a lot of crowd work with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do some crowd work and then I find that something works, I'll do it on the next show, and then the next show, the next show. So then eventually it becomes a part of my act.
Okay.
So then in the moment, it looks like, this is happening right then and there, but it's actually been over the course of months that I've kind of developed. So improv moments turn into actual bits for me. That's just my writing process. So some comedians do it differently. You have to do whatever works for you. But improv has always been kind of the forefront of how I write stand-up. So, yeah, they mesh well together.
That's really cool. Do you have a preference between the two?
For years, I would have said improv, but then once I did my first stand-up show, there's something about writing material and then delivering it and then getting that payoff of that laugh. There's something about it versus just kind of having a conversation with someone. So I'd say it's so close. I'd say 50-50.
Okay.
Because there's moments where you have an improv conversation with someone and it's so fun, and then you have moments where you write something, you're not sure how it's going to turn out, and then it's good. So for me, they go hand in hand.
Oh, it makes sense. Not only are you delivering to others, but you also, I'm sure, watch comedy that other people put on and that kind of thing. Do you have a favorite comedian?
Yeah, I do. So I have a couple, but Tim Hawkins is definitely my favorite comedian. I've seen him a couple times, and he never fails to make me laugh. I love Tim. I'm a big Nate Bargatze fan. I love that. I just love a lot of the clean guys. I never got into watching any of that dirty comedy stuff. It just never intrigued me.
Okay.
But Tim Hawkins is up there, and Nate Bargatze. Those are my two all-time faves.
Would you say that when you see someone that's been doing this for a while, you've watched them, do you get inspired in their work and go like, oh, this is so great. I love to see how the audience is interacting with them or things like that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I watch their style, and then I think, okay, are there any similarities between my style and their style? And then I kind of take notes and how did they interact with this person? It's like watching it. It's almost like watching an expert do something, and you're the amateur, and you're making notes and observations, and you go, okay, they did this, and you don't copy, but you go, they handled this person so well. How can I work on that? And it's all that stuff. You just kind of take notes, and then you incorporate it into your act, but make it your own.
That makes sense. I mean, I understand in terms of watching other pastors.
I was just going to say it's probably
like
the same thing.
Yeah, because sometimes you watch a sermon or watch someone else give a message, and you think, wow, that really struck my heart, but I don't exactly know why.
Exactly.
Sometimes it can just be, is God doing something there? But sometimes you realize, they delivered it in a certain way that really opened something up, or hit the mark perfectly, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
So
It's the same thing with pastors and churches and stuff. You go to a conference or something and you watch a pastor, you love how they said something or they talk about something.
yeah,
And obviously, all pastors have their own style.
sure.
But then you take that with you and you go, okay, I really love how they said this or did this. How can I make that my own and bring that to my congregation? It's the same thing.
Now, one question I'd have for you in terms of the world of comedy, what are the challenges in your line of work?
When I first started, it was just trying to get stage time.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to, I would get stage time. I try to get anywhere. I'd do the comedy club scene. I would do, a church here, a church there, and stuff like that. So that was early on. That was the difficulty getting stage time. And, so part of what I started doing is as I progressed in doing stand up and stuff, my faith in Jesus really started to get stronger and stronger. So then I was talking to a friend, and there's a firm thing that Jesus was using that friend to speak to me. He talked to me about the importance of quality over quantity, the importance of doing a good job less of the time versus doing a mediocre job more of the time.
Ooh, I like it.
And with that, I started to get less and less gigs. But what I started to do was devote what I was doing to Christ, to Jesus, and to God. And I had less opportunities, but they became more impactful for me. So I learned more from less. But I mean, that's just my journey. That's what I did. And some people, they go and do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows and they get their stage time. Not everyone's path is the same. Being a pastor, an actor, whatever you may be, everyone's path is different. And I was always under the impression that I had to do exactly what all these professionals are doing. But Jesus was like, no, 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 we know how he works.
Yes.
And he brought me on a different route. And that's, so the challenges I had early on was trying to get stage time. But as I progressed, I learned that, when you devote it to Jesus, he's going to take care of everything. He'll bring you the right opportunities at the right time. And that to me was a hard lesson to learn, but it paid off.
Oh, that's so good. Because all of a sudden, not only are you changing the focus of why you're doing what you're doing, but the approach changes too. So I love it. That's really, really good.
How's that for an answer? Isn't that good?
So, question for you. I mean, everybody, whatever kind of work they're in, they see themselves getting somewhere at some point, right? They have a goal or a dream. In terms of the world of comedy, do you have a dream venue or dream audience that you'd like to perform in front of one day?
Ooh. So overall, my dream entirely is to just do comedy full time. My dream venue, I haven't really thought about that yet. So the very first comedy show I actually saw was where was that at? It was at Brooklyn, I think it was Brooklyn Park or Brooklyn Center at a church out there.
Okay.
That was the very first comedy show I'd ever seen.
Oh, really?
And I just was, because it was like a mega church out there. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, it'd be so cool to be on the stage looking out at 2,000-3,000 people. So I think maybe dream venue would be like a mega church. I think that'd be kind of cool. But it's wherever God takes me. I don't know.
It's so fun. I love hearing these kinds of answers to questions just because everyone's heart is different. You get to see the comedian on stage or the pastor on stage, but this is a time of getting a little bit of the behind the scenes. So thanks for taking the time with us to kind of explore those issues.
Yeah.
What about for aspiring comedians or people that are thinking about entering the comedy scene? What kind of advice would you give them?
So advice that I got early on is just be yourself. Be yourself. When you first start out, you want to be like other comics and stuff like that. The successful ones are themselves. And that's what I've just learned, in my journey. Just be yourself. Be yourself. And, ultimately, if I can give any advice besides be yourself, it's really give it to Jesus. Let him be in charge of you and, basically let him run it. Let him be in charge of it. And you'll be surprised in what happens. As people, we think, okay, I'll give it to Jesus, but then it's going to go like this. It's like, no, it's going to go exactly how he wants it to go, not how we want it. It's like becoming a pastor of a church. You could have 100 different plans, but then ultimately Jesus is like, well, pump the brakes because I'm in charge here and I know what's best for the congregation and the church. Same thing for the comedy. That's advice that I've gotten early on and it's paid off.
Very interesting. I mean, this ties in also with the next question, which was what sets you apart from other comedians? I mean, it seems like the idea of giving something to God is really central to what you do.
I just know that when I do a show, I want to give it 110%, and I want Jesus to be present, and I want people to be open to hearing about him with what I do. A pastor that I had years ago, we planted a church, and he said that, I mean, it was a nightmare just to go through all this because the devil didn't want this church to happen. You know, it was just roadblock after roadblock. And I asked him, I said, do you ever feel like maybe it wasn't worth it? And he's like, if we started this church, it took 10 years to start, and it was all for one person to come to Jesus, it was all worth it. And I've kind of brought that mindset into my comedy too. It's like if I do a show and let's say it doesn't go well, but one person really feels the presence of Jesus, it was all worth it.
Amen.
So, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
I love it.
that. Love that.
It's so true, though, because we so often have other focuses, you know, especially in the moment of trying to get something established. But when you realize God's the center of it, we're doing it for him, and what person is he going to touch through it, our focus changes.
Yeah, and ultimately, again, if he wasn't involved with what I'm doing, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. And I can't take any credit. I'm simply just a vessel for what he's doing. And I'm beyond grateful that he chose me.
In terms of, I mean, we're already touching on some of the faith journey here, but what's your favorite part about being a Christian?
There's so many things. I want to ask you that. I'm going to turn it around on you.
Favorite part about being a Christian? You know, when I was young, I would attend church, but I didn't have that personal relationship with Jesus Christ yet. And it was interesting in the sense of recognizing there was something good, but not understanding it all the way. But once that personal relationship with Jesus opened up, I realized, wait a minute, this is actually what I was created for. This is what it's actually meant to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to feel like, oh, I need to do this set of things or do a routine or I almost felt like a chore, you know, when it's religious.
Yeah.
But when that personal relationship came in, all of a sudden I realized, oh my goodness, this is so fulfilling. This is what I was created for. So I think that's part of I guess if I had to pick a favorite, it was just that relational intimacy with God where you realize, oh, I'm actually made to interact with my Heavenly Father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's literally what I was going to say. So ditto. No, for me, it would be the relationship aspect with Jesus too. You know, you hear about Jesus in the Bible and you go to church and stuff like that, but it's not until you really have a relationship with him that you realize it's beyond words. And that's, to me, the most important part, is having that relationship with him, which is crucial for being a believer. But even just hearing his voice in the daily walk of life, you know, praying and all that stuff, just the amount of freedom that he gives us as believers, it's refreshing knowing that you wake up and you go to bed and you're his child.
Yes.
There's something about that I can't put into words.
You've had the opportunity to speak in front of a lot of different crowds, a lot of different venues. What would you say to young people that are curious about Jesus?
So I got really involved in the church from an early age. And so back in 2007, I really got involved with my youth group and church and stuff like that. And I think that really played a huge part in my faith journey from a young age, getting involved in a church, but not just going to church and being like, okay, I'm going to church tonight, or a youth group or whatnot. It's important to feel connected and plugged in. That's, to me, from 7th grade until my senior year, the youth group and the youth pastor that I had totally changed my outlook on Jesus and the Bible and everything. He taught me the importance of loving Jesus, putting him first, because he also displayed that. He showed that. He was a huge influence on my life. And he taught me from an early age, you know, when you put Jesus first, it's not going to be easy, but it'll be worth it. And so if I could encourage any younglings or Padawans out there, I would encourage them to start going to church at a younger age, but ask questions. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions about the Bible. Don't be afraid to say, what did Jesus mean when he said this? Just ask. I asked so many questions that were, looking back at them, they were obvious answers, you know, but just ask questions. How are you supposed to learn if you don't ask questions? But get plugged into a church that you feel like you're getting spiritually fed. That's just it. Because you can go to a church and say, I went to church, and not feel Jesus. Because it's like you have to go where you feel connected with the Spirit. That's why there's so many churches, different options for you to choose from. You want to go where you're fed spiritually.
I agree 100%. It's so important not only to go because we know we're supposed to go to church and we're supposed to receive from God. We need the fellowship. But if you feel connected somewhere,
Mm.
you're going to also invest into the people around you, not just receive. So 100% agree. This is a kind of a funny question aside, but in your walk with God, have you seen God display a sense of humor?
Oh my gosh. So for years, I have always struggled with patience. I've always struggled with patience. And I made the cardinal mistake when I became a Christian. Lord, give me patience. And for that first year, I hit every red light. I was stuck in traffic all the time. That was my rookie mistake. And God showing me like, hey, you wanted patience, and I'm giving you every opportunity to be patient. And I never prayed that again. Never prayed that again. I said, Lord, I know you're trying to show me patience, but if there's a way that we could fast track it to maybe give me the patience and we can pretend that I learned all that stuff. He's shown me that he has a sense of humor. He really has. That's just one of the many things. But I mean, even just some interactions I come across, I'll be having a bad day and then I meet someone and it's literally only a God encounter, because he knows I need it. He knows I need to be uplifted somehow. And I meet so there's one time where I was having a horrible day and I'm like, Lord, I just need to know that you're there with me. And I met just the craziest person in the world. I was at Target and I met the craziest person. I could not stop laughing because they were hilarious. but they didn't realize how funny they were. They're like, I don't know why, but I think you need to hear this. And then I ended up talking to this person for 15, 20 minutes and I was just dying laughing. It turned my day around and I turned around and that person was gone. Total angel. I know it was an angel.
Wow.
But he knew I needed that. So then he brought that to me, and then that person disappeared. And yeah, again, angel or they were arrested. I don't know. It's one of the two. It's one of the two. So, but he has a sense of humor. I know he does, or else I wouldn't be able to do this.
I love how God brings us into things that we realize, wait a minute, God, the whole desire, the whole source of where this is coming from out of me has to be from you.
100%.
In terms of your journey, I know we're going to go into that a little bit here soon, but there's been a lot of growth in different ways. You already mentioned, growing as a comedian, growing in faith a little bit. How do people grow in faith? If people are watching this thinking, maybe they're a new Christian or they're hungry for more of God, what would you advise people in terms of growing in their faith?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask about growing because I'm only 5'5". I'm a little man. So yeah, my feet are kicking. You just can't see it. So growth, I found for me, it all ties into reading the Word, reading the Bible, and in being 2026, that's crazy to think we're in 2026, but technology being at the forefront and stuff, you have the Bible apps on your phone and stuff. I have found that I get more from reading an actual Bible,
Yes.
Highlighting and stuff like that, because it feels more personal, kind of like, you can order something through your phone through Amazon. Or, back in the early 2000s, you actually had to call the 1-800 number,
Back in the day,
You had to make an effort to do something like that. So I think that's important with the Bible, making an effort to actually read an actual hand Bible versus the phone app, because it feels like you're more connected. You're making an extra effort, and that's to me what has grown me in my faith is just actually reading the Word. And then so early on, I would always think, okay, I'm going to read 5 chapters of John today. It's like I had a friend who was like, he learned so much from the Bible just by reading one verse a day. And he's like, I read the Bible, the whole Bible, cover to cover, but it took me 4 years. And I'm like, well, like how are you reading it? And he's like, I would read one verse at a time. And I'm like, why? He's like, so that I could actually dwell on that verse and hear what God has to tell me. So for me, I was so into reading the Word cover to cover, being like, okay, I did it, when God was trying to tell me, slow down, read verses one by one so you can let me speak to you through that. And since doing that, I've really learned what an incredible God we serve. Just focusing on the little passages and not so much reading, the big stories, focusing on what he said in Psalms and Proverbs and Philippians and all that stuff.
It's one of those things too where what you were sharing earlier about a actual printed Bible versus just scrolling on your phone. I don't know if you ever run into this, but for me, sometimes I'll think, I don't know exactly what the reference to that verse is, but I know around where it is on the page in my Bible. So if I turn there, I can find it. But when it comes to scrolling, it's all the same. So visually, it's easier for me too to just actually have like a handheld Bible and
Well, and it just, to me, it feels more personal.
Yeah.
I mean, some people like to use their phones more. You see that. I'm sure you see that a lot in church and stuff like
I
that.
do.
People pulling out their phones, and you wonder, okay, are they actually in Matthew or are they on Instagram? You don't know.
I mean, it is a question that comes up occasionally, especially when they start chuckling and you're thinking, this passage isn't that funny. I don't know what's going on, but
Yeah, just talking about Noah's Ark, and he's dying in the back. What's going on?
yeah, what's happening? Why is he so engaged in this message all of a sudden? I mean, never seemed interested before, but oh
That's
no,
funny.
that's good though.
And now a word from our sponsor. Is there a sponsor?
Medines make music.
Okay.
Medines make music.
Medines make music. That's our sponsor.
So this might be a good time to kind of transition into your own journey, but how did you come into faith of knowing Jesus Christ?
So back in 2007, I was in public school and I just didn't fit in at all. I didn't fit in at all. And actually, you know what? Back up. 2004. 2004, I was living in Farmington, and across the street from me was the pastor of the church in town. And his son was, I think, a year or two younger than me. So we started playing together outside. We'd play Star Wars, jump on the trampoline and stuff like that. So I got to know him and the family. And then they invited me, hey, why don't you come to church, And
Awesome.
now, at the time, it was Royal Ranger program, so that's how old I was. So it was like, do you know what Missionettes is, Royal Rangers, anything like that?
I haven't heard of it, no.
Pretty much like you got youth group. It's right below the youth group. So
Okay.
it's like the young kids.
Yeah.
And I started to go there, and then as I got older, I kept going to Royal Rangers, and then 7th grade rolled around, and I started going to that youth group with that pastor I was telling you about earlier. And I was in public school at the time. Didn't fit in at all. I just felt so out of place. But the church I was going to also was a school. So then I actually transferred into the school. And so where I went to school, I went to church, and that was 7th through 12th grade. So that's where my faith journey really started, was 7th grade. So
Wow. And that was the starting point. But tell us more about your story. I mean, if you came to Christ at that point, what are some of the things that surrounded that? I mean, was it mostly through the youth group? Was it mostly through life events? Or how did your faith emerge through that time and after?
ooh, it's a loaded question. One of my biggest supporters and my best friend is my mom. She's always been there for me, and she always will be. I love you, Mother. And she encouraged me she knew I wasn't happy in public school. And, she knew that I was going to the Royal Ranger program and stuff like that. And she's always been a believer. She's always been a Christian. And she encouraged me to take that step and go into that school and all that stuff. So I started to do that. And while I was there, she also encouraged me to read my Bible. So she's always been the one behind me, encouraging me and kind of leading me on my step to get closer to Jesus. So without her, I probably wouldn't be a believer. It was all her that started. She got me going, and then Jesus took me by the hand and did the rest.
Moms are important.
They are.
I mean, no joke.
They are.
But anyway, continue.
Oh, yeah. No, that was about it. No, moms are important, and she's my world. She's my best friend. And like I said, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be doing comedy, and I probably wouldn't be a believer if it wasn't for her. So, I mean, I owe her everything. She's my world.
Are there other steps that you took later? So let's say you graduate from high school. You weren't a comedian right away.
No, I wasn't. I wanted to be a musician.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that journey, how you went from some of those early Christian encounters to where you are today. What are some of the steps that God took you through? And I think this will be helpful not just for people who are maybe wanting to become comedians, but also just folks in general who are maybe thinking, I wonder, what has God called me to? How do you find out about that? How did you find out?
How I found out was literally through pain. So what happened was I wanted to be a rock drummer. I wanted to be a professional musician. I mean, growing up, my favorite band was Rush. I loved Led Zeppelin. I could drum to all that stuff. I was a drummer, and I could play those like to the T, just everything. And I wanted to be a professional musician. I was in a couple bands. We wrote music, but it's like no matter how far along in this band we got, something would happen and we'd disband. You know what I mean? And then I just kind of got involved in my church, and I was on the worship team. So I was drumming on the worship team, kind of keeping an eye out. Okay, how can I use this as practice to, form a band? I met other Christians. We formed a like a secular band, but with Christian, intentions. I would write lyrics to songs. So even though we'd be considered a secular band, I would have biblical messages throughout my lyrics because that was always important to me. But then as I went along and stuff, all of a sudden on my right arm, it started to hurt terribly when I would drum. Like it was like a borderline carpal tunnel deal.
Oh,
And I was like, well, like I can't drum unless it's in pain. So that's why I said earlier to your question, it was pain. So like the pain in my arm was so bad I couldn't drum anymore. So I had to get off worship team. And it was in that moment I'm like, all I've wanted is to be a musician. And my pastor said to me, hey, actually, would you just help with announcements one Sunday? Would you just, and I'm like, sure, whatever. I go up there and then I'm reading the announcements and I crack some joke. And the whole congregation laughs. And I'm like, this is cool. I was like, I never even thought about that. And that was the moment where it was kind of like Jesus was telling me, now you see. Now you see. The whole music thing and stuff like that, that was you trying to do something. Now let me take over. And then from there, I really started to explore, making people laugh. And that was one of the things is if I can make my mom laugh, it was the best feeling in the world, but she's not easy to make laugh. So I know that if I can make her laugh, then it's great. It's a great feeling. So I said to the pastor, I got off stage and I said, hey, can I do announcements again next week? And he's like, if you want. So then I quickly went home and I was like, okay. So then I started writing some jokes and stuff like that.
so you were already preparing then for the next service.
I was, and I didn't realize what God was doing. And then the next service came about and I did the announcements and I remembered some of the jokes I wrote and I got laughs again. And I'm like, this is okay, cool. Okay. And then, cause I'd always wanted to be involved in spreading the gospel with music. It was with my words. And I'm like, well, I see a church, I see a pastor in a pulpit. And I'm like, I don't want to be a pastor, but I want to be able to talk about Jesus. And I'm like, so I was thinking and praying, and then my mom said to me, "It's like you're funny. Why don't you be a comedian?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh," because it all tied together.
Yeah.
And from that moment, that's when I really started to explore comedy and improv and all that stuff, and that's how God used it. So what I was doing was my plan in the beginning with worship and being on the drums, thinking, "Okay, this is what I'm going to do." When that was the mistake, what I am going to do. When Jesus was like, you got to let me be in control and show you what I want you to do. That was the difference. So painful lesson, but I would not change a thing.
So you mentioned, I'm kind of connecting a few different dots of things that you've shared so far. You mentioned that you watched a comedian in a church some years back. You were impressed by how they operated. Then you also had different times of doing some improv, things like that. And then when you had been a drummer, you had a secular band. Would you say that at the beginning of your time as a comedian, were you mostly in secular comedy settings?
Yes,
or did you?
I started off in the comedy clubs.
Okay.
I did my very first set. I mean, at my church, I did a couple shows, not knowing what I was doing. I wrote like 30 minutes and I'm thinking like, this is the greatest 30 minutes in the world. I watched it back a couple months ago and I shut it off because I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, but it's trial and error. But I had to go to the comedy clubs because I had to get some stage time to learn how to do all this. And one of the guys that ran the club, he gave me so much advice and I took that advice and I ran with it. And I still talk to him to this day. I'll ask him, hey, I'm working on this. Do you have any input on that? And he'd tell me, hey, you should do this. And he's been so helpful. But I got to a point where I was in the club scene and then Jesus said, okay, I'm pulling you out and we're going to send you out. And that's when I stopped going to the comedy clubs and then I started doing church gigs. So, because that's my passion is to do churches. I love doing that. So.
And would you say of the doors that have opened up for you so far, a lot of them have been in churches?
Yeah, I'd say it's the majority of them are churches. I mean, I've done corporate events and stuff like that and private events, but the church shows are the ones that I really, really love the most because I feel like in the heart of the church, we can sometimes forget why we're there.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important even to go to church on Sunday and hear the pastors talking about why we're here, and it's because of Jesus and going into the world and spreading the gospel. It's so easy to forget that in our everyday lives, but being able to break down barriers through comedy and then give them a message of hope it's like that's something I love doing because it's something I would want to hear.
What's coming up in the future for you? I mean, do you have different? I know you travel somewhat for different shows and different things, but what's on the horizon?
So I got February is my Valentine's tour. I have quite a few shows coming up, and one of which is going to be right here at the Bridge Church. And this church is led by your very own Pastor Max Minson. How do you pronounce your last name?
Meyerhofer.
Yeah, I didn't have to. It's going to be right here at the Bridge Church. So that's one of the gigs I got, and then a couple other ones throughout February. So
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to having you back here, and we also appreciate your taking the time for this interview.
yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you. And if you guys get a chance, go on social media and check out the Bridge Network Church led by Pastor Max. Phenomenal church. They know what they're doing, and they put Jesus first. So start attending this church. Your lives will be changed. I promise you that. And he didn't tell me to say that either.
I did not.
I have two questions for you. One, how do you dress so well? And number two, what would you tell the people watching if you could tell them one thing about Jesus? What would you tell them?
Boy, the dressing well, I don't have a good answer for that other than I usually just find a deal somewhere and typically around Black Friday, and then I start getting a bunch of clothing items.
Pastor shop clearance is what he's saying.
Yeah.
He's
I am
yeah,
married. That
he's
also
married.
has to do with it. You know?
Yes.
The wife has said many things about colors and combos and things like that, and I go, okay.
Now, if you could tell someone watching this video, if you could tell them one thing about Jesus, what would you tell them?
One thing I would tell people about Jesus is that he's not some old man in a stuffy room far away that doesn't care about people. Jesus loves individuals. He wants to draw people back to God the Father, and he is willing to make a way for you if you're willing to give your life to him. Jesus Christ laid down everything so that we can be free, so that we can live life eternally with God. And our response to that sacrifice really determines not only how we spend eternity, but how we live life now. So the one thing about Jesus I would say is give your life to him. Live with a purpose. And as you do that, you'll find satisfaction you won't find anywhere else.
I think that's a closer.
I
right
think
there.
that's a
That's a closer.